the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
I think so, sir. Matt Green, the Georgia Bulldogs, though. You get Humphrey back in this one this week, so that and there's the portal comes back, the 5-star kid, Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers officially off to the NFL. But before I pick your brain about that, Matt Green, the Dogs, they destroy Florida State. It was not close. It was never close. It was tough for the Orange Bowl onlookers who made the trip. I feel bad for the Florida State fans who made the trip down, or even Georgia fans who paid a lot of money potentially for that trip to go see the Dogs.
I'm sure Georgia fans still had a lot of fun watching a 60-point win.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe. I just look at it as like when there's so many dudes out. That's what I want to ask you, because I saw some culture stuff about this after, and a lot of people were ripping Florida State, and a lot of people were saying, like, there was a lot of divisive comments from both sides of the aisle here. Where do you fall, Matt Green, on what happened between Georgia and Florida State in Miami?
So you want me to get into the culture things, or are we talking about the actual game?
The culture thing, and then let's get into the actual game.
In terms of that, so I think two things can be true. And so I like to compare this to kind of like how we talk about professional athletes. Like so that we there's people who criticize Michael Jordan, because he wasn't like an activist for his community and stuff like that. But you hype up like a Bill Russell, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like he was an activist, he did whatever, right? Stood up for causes and stuff. But you can elevate one guy for doing that, but you don't have to downgrade another guy for not doing that, right? Like, this guy's extraordinary because, along with being a professional athlete and everything, he also thinks whatever is important. So you can hype up Georgia's culture, because I think it's right to. Like, they have, Bullard went pro, Tyke Smith went pro, Kamari Laster went pro. Several guys that the draft. I guess McConkey, technically he left early too, right? So a lot of guys that could have just sat out and been their final game did play for Georgia. Amarius Mims and Bowers, they battled injuries, so they did opt out, quote unquote, for this game. But they kind of battled injuries throughout the season. So I think it does say something about Georgia's culture that so many guys wanted to finish the season and make a statement and everything. But I don't think we have to downgrade Florida State's culture because they didn't. I think this is the natural, college football like world that we've kind of created, that these bowl games don't really matter. Like, Florida State, you could say maybe there's like an extra saltiness about not being in the playoff. I'm sure more than that. It's like, let's be honest, like, Florida State was kind of built on like a rent-a-player like philosophy, a lot of transfers that like maybe Florida State wasn't their favorite school coming out of high school, but this is where they ended up. This is where they had the best opportunity to play. And now it's gotten me to where I want to be. I'm in a position to go pro. Fuck this bowl game. I don't need this bowl game. So, it's like a hired gun, a mercenary, like they got you where you want. And it's unfortunate because I think Florida State, I still have, like, even though they lost by 60 points, I still have the belief that they should have made the college football playoff based on what they did through 13 games. But I don't think just because Georgia, I think this kind of, I don't know if this proves Georgia has the best culture in college football, but I think it proves that, they're kind of built different. But that doesn't mean that because of Florida State has these guys opting out, they're somehow have this poor culture.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also, I think what this showed more than anything is Georgia's ahead of Florida State in the depth department. Florida State's recruiting really well the last couple cycles under Mike Norvell. I think Mike Norvell's the guy. He's had a great year. Like, he has turned Florida State, they're back into a juggernaut in college football. But they don't have, we talked about at the beginning of the year where it was like they were very top heavy. You had Verse, you had Keon Coleman, you had Trey Benson, you had Jordan Travis. Like, you had a lot of dudes at the top, and it was like, hey, if they're healthy, they're going to be really hard to beat. Like, this is going to be a dominant football team. But not like they had dudes after dudes. They didn't have the Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, guys like that yet. Now, I think they're going to be there
that's
sooner rather than later, but that's a whole heck of a lot of production, and so much of their identity was wrapped up in those guys that when you lose all of them, there's just a bunch of inexperience, a bunch of guys who didn't know what they were doing, and it was just a lot of limited talent out there. Now, do I think the score will be the same in 2 years? I don't think so. But I think Georgia is so deep, so if they lose at Brock Bowers to this game, they just have bodies. Like, Georgia is the deepest, I think right now, the deepest program in college football. So I think Georgia can withstand opt-outs better than I think any program in the country. I don't know if you agree, but I would say they can withstand it better than anybody.
I think that's true, but it's not like these two teams had anywhere close to the same number of opt-outs. Like, I saw a graphic that was like said that they both had like 27 players based on like the portal, and it's like Georgia had a bunch of third, fourth stringers, the dudes that weren't playing that were transferring. Like, this was basically Georgia's first string. Like, Bowers may have been out and Amarius Mims may have been out, but like, this was Georgia at full strength, just about, playing against Florida State's entire second, third string with like a fourth string quarterback. So it's like, it's not even fair. Like, I hate hearing people that are like, yeah, but if you were anywhere close to Georgia, like you wouldn't have lost by 60. Like, you could at least like lose by like 30 or something. It's like, we had a third, fourth string quarterback. It's like, Georgia is possibly the best team in the country. Like, Georgia potentially could have beaten Florida State handedly with their starters. Like, we don't know, but without everybody, every key player, it's not like it's just a few guys here. Like, I almost felt bad for Florida State fans watching, because I just knew the narrative coming out of this game was going to be like, oh, clearly they didn't deserve to be in the playoff. Like, if they were good at all, they could have put up a fighting. It's like they gave Georgia like a tough like first drive, right? Like, I think Georgia turned it over on downs on the first drive of the game, and then proceeded to have 9 straight touchdown drives. And it was like, okay, it's getting a little out of hand.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's a bowl game, and I think Georgia fans, I think a lot of people, it's not even just Georgia fans, I don't want to pick on them. I think it's just more of, I think college football fans need to recalibrate how they view non-playoff bowl games. And I mean, when we go to the 12-team playoff next year, I think it's going to be even worse, but like, it's an exhibition. And the difference here with like Florida State going undefeated and then Mike Norvell having to get his guys up, being the first undefeated Power 5 team to be left out of the college football playoff, to get them up for Georgia, like, that's never going to be easy. And it's just, you really have nothing to play for in that regard, where it's like, I could not imagine how deflating that had to be for all those dudes who did everything. They didn't lose a game, and then this is still an exhibition game. Like, no matter how you shake it, it is an exhibition game and not a playoff game. And we have no idea how this game would have gone if they were all at full strength. I mean, you know what would have been fun? Georgia and Florida State at full strength. Like, that would have been a lot of fun. I think it would have been a close game, and we could actually have some narrative conversations. Maybe it's not a close game. Maybe Georgia still beats them handedly at full strength. And then we can talk about that.
First round game if Georgia would have beaten Alabama. I'm not sure if
that's true.
Texas still jumps them or what, but yeah, it was definitely unfortunate. I don't know if I'm with Kirby, like, if it's an indictment on the entire bowl like landscape. Like, not every game had like this many opt-outs. Yeah. But I mean, and at the same time, like you're saying with the 12-team playoff, like, I think it's not going to be an issue anymore, because those are all the only teams we want to see play anyway. Like, in terms of like the big games, you're tired of watching number 5 and number 6 play, and it's not a big game, you know? So you're going to see all those top 12 teams, like, they're going to have their rosters. Like, obviously there's a whole other thing with who knows how many guys that are in the playoffs transfer and don't actually play for their teams in the playoff. Like, that's going to be a whole other thing. But I'm
not as worried about that.
In terms of opt-outs, like, I don't think we're all going to care if that much, because some starters are sitting out of the Holiday Bowl, you know, or the Cheez-It Bowl or something like that, like, between a couple of teams ranked in the 20s.
I just am not as worried about that. People are doomsdaying that. Players really want to play for things that matter. Like, players want to play for a title. I think the vast majority NFL teams are not going to like that.
Though, man.
No, I don't disagree, but I'm saying starters and a lot of the main guys, they're not opting out. So people are like, the quarterback, you're going to see a big time quarterback opt out. And I'm like, I don't think you are. I don't think that's how this is going to go. And I also think if we go down that road, guess what? NIL is going to put in some guidelines, and there's going to be some contract stuff where it's like, hey, if you play an X amount, like this is part of the deal. To get X amount of money, you cannot opt out in the bowl games or playoff games. Like they're going to figure that out. I'm not as worried about that as other people are.
Prorated NIL stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not worried about that. Like there's a lot to be worried about with college football going forward. Losing star quarterbacks in the college football playoff and a 12-team playoff is not one of the things I'm worried about at the moment. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
I don't know. We'll see, man.
I hope not. Maybe I'm.
Go.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.